Thank you for being here. This podcast is for the leaders who need mentoring and motivation and some encouragement and a way to create momentum in their leadership journey. And that's my goal for you, is to talk about topics. I hear leaders say they want more information about how to be a better leader, because leadership starts with you. And today we're going to talk about, to me, the framework of how to shift from a control-based leadership to an influence-based leadership. We have previously talked about how control-based leaders, they use authority. They are talking about how I decide. I'm the one that makes the decisions. I'm enforcing the rules. I'm micromanaging. And I am using maybe a little bit of fear to lead the community. If you don't do this, I'm going to have to write you up. God, how many times have I heard that? And it just doesn't make sense, especially if you're not going to do it. No creativity, no ownership, no retention, no impact, right? Like, you're not going to grow people inside of a control room. And if you're trying to control and tell people what to do, then it's not really going to happen. The modern day worker is a little hip to control. They're just like, I have to be here. I'm going to go find somewhere else to work. So the leadership has to change. The leadership has to understand we have to do things differently. And so then the next level of leadership is a management-based leadership, which is obviously better than a control-based leadership, but it is the next layer. It's the I direct. I don't necessarily have to do the work, but I need to be the one to tell you how to do the work. And we are managing processes, and we're ensuring compliance, and we're living an average life. But average isn't good enough anymore, although some of us would like average because it's so bad right now. I get that. You get stability. It's limited and really long-term growth. Management can keep things the same, but leadership needs to be the one that leads people into a new era of work. Management-based leadership feels comfortable, and it's where most leaders operate. But it's time for us to shift from management to influence, because influence-based leadership is how we are going to get people to be the best versions of themselves. We're going to educate. We're going to empower people. We're going to trust them. And we're going to create a growth environment inside of our community. That's what influence brings. And if you do it right, you create more freedom inside of your community for you and for other leaders. So how do we do it? How do we go from control to management to top of the heap, which is influence-based leadership? I'm going to talk to you about that today, and I'm excited about it. If you've bought my course and you've listened to a few other podcasts or read a few of my emails that I send out on Saturday morning, my mentoring emails, you will understand one of my favorite parts of the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. One of my favorite parts about the book that completely shaped my leadership was the emotional bank account. In really understanding that concept and embodying it, to understand that my responsibility is to add value into everybody's emotional bank account. Now that goes to families, to residents, to associates, to vendors, to tours. I understand that everybody walking in and out of my community, in and out of my life, I want to add value into their lives. I want the emotional bank account that I am responsible for in their life to rise. That's what I want it to do. I want the numbers, the deposits to rise. And that is the framework on how you can build influence inside of your community. Before I talk about what the R.I.S E framework is, I want you to understand one thing. You matter. How you invest in yourself matters. If you plan on literally making this framework happen for you in your life or learning how to be a more influential leader, you're going to have to invest in yourself. Self-awareness and self-regulation are very important. Why, Erin? Why is it so important? Because when you start investing, it's a long-term investment. Some of the people in your community will react very quickly to your investment in them. And some people are going to look at you and they're going to be like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Are you going to keep doing this? And really be very skeptical. If you are looking to invest in people and want them to change, it's going to take time. The thing that's going to stop you from doing this consistently and for long term is the disappointment and the frustration that you don't see change happening fast enough. But I want to say to you that change comes subtly. Every day is another day of progress. And you have to look for the subtle signs that people are starting to relax and trust you. They're starting to see what you're trying to do. They're starting to receive the benefits that you're trying to give them. And if you're not self-aware enough, and if you can't regulate your own emotions enough, you are going to find this to be very difficult, and you are not going to want to do it. But I'm here to tell you, do it anyway. Make it a priority to add value to other people because it adds value to you. Do it anyway. Walk your halls in the morning and say good morning and say nice things to people just because it'll actually make you feel better. Tell people how nice they look. Show people what they're doing that's making an impact in people's lives, because what you see and what acknowledgement that you give and what you praise in public will be what continues to happen. And if you start planting the seeds of positivity, of impact, of commitment, and you start influencing people for that 30 seconds to a minute to 2 minutes that they see you, you're going to start seeing change. But it takes time. Like your 401k. Just because you put $50 in a week or $200 in a week doesn't mean that you're going to have $1 million tomorrow. But it does mean over time and in the right conditions that you'll have $1 million 40 years from now. If you invest enough money, enough physical dollars, and enough time to let it compound. So think of it like a 401k that actually grows faster than a 401k, but that is going to take time. Okay? So expectations breeds resentment, and resentment kills your joy. Resentments are uncommunicated expectations. So when you start the process of replacing control or management-based leadership to influence, know that it's going to take time and it's going to feel uncomfortable. Growth happens in the uncomfortableness. Don't quit because it's uncomfortable. Those dip moments, those valleys in between mountains, they still grow flowers, right? They still have value. Don't quit in the dip. Don't quit in the valley. Keep going because the outcomes are worth it. And the other thing, don't expect 100% of your team to respond. It's an unrealistic expectation. But believe that the people who can make the biggest impact in your community will respond. Always talk to the people who are moving the needle, because you want people to rise to the occasion and not lower to a standard that other people set. You want them to rise to the standard you set. And in order to do that, you're going to have to talk to them in a way that it makes it feel worth it, realistic, and important. So this is why investing in yourself matters. This is why understanding human psychology and human behavior matters. And this is why making the investment in people's emotional bank accounts matter, because you're going to make a mistake. But if they trust you and they see you trying and they see you being consistent with it, then you can get over it and back on the positive path very quickly. So the R.I.S.E framework, which is going from control-based to management-based to influence-based, is a 4-part framework that focuses on relationships, inspiration, strategy, and empowerment. That is the R.I.S E framework. So if you want to try to start building more influence, less control, less fear, more positive impact inside your community, we're going to focus on relationships, inspiring people, strategy, and empowerment. Our first letter in the framework is R, which is relationships. Here's what you need to know about relationships. The way that you think about people matters, period. You cannot make the other person feel important in your presence if you secretly feel that they're not important. That energy is felt. The way that you think about people directly affects the way that you interact with people. It directly affects your relationship with them. When you make comments about people don't want to work anymore, or they don't want to work anymore, or I can't find anybody who can do this job, or it's better that I just do it myself, you are communicating something very negative to another person, to a member on your team, to a member of management, and then you're poisoning somebody else about the way that they think about somebody, or even the way they think about themselves. So it's really important for you to understand that the way that you think about somebody directly affects how close and your ability to connect with that other person. So the way you think affects everything you do, because the way you think affects your emotions affect your actions, and your actions affect your results. People are only influenced by people that make them feel good about themselves. In some way, I see what they're doing and what they're saying are aligned. I see that they're actually working in the vision that they're trying to communicate to us. So therefore, I am influenced. The relationships that you have with your team members, with your residents, with your families, with your vendors, with your corporate office, all the things are really important. Leadership starts where trust begins. That's where influence is. It's in the trust. Trust is like the oxygen of leadership. Trust can inspire change. Trust can make people choose you, your community, to work there, to live there. How they feel when they're around you is really important. And that's why what you think about them matters. Maybe we can't find anybody to work. I think that's true. It's hard to find people to work in the amount of jobs that we need today and in the future. All of that is true. But if we sit in that frustration, the energy that is created is not going to attract the people that you want in that community. So what you're thinking doesn't serve you. You need to change it. I'm not looking for just anybody to work in this community. I'm looking for the right people to work in this community. And the right people are, and that's a question for you to answer. Because if we just hire anybody, then we dilute the purposeful, meaningful people who are really completing 20% of the jobs, 20% of the tasks. But when we look at the people who are doing that 20% and we figure out the patterns, what is the similarities between them, we can go into each interview and we can find the right type of people by asking the right questions, by being in the right frame of mind, by understanding that I need people that I can build relationships with who will allow me to connect with them and who want the same things that we want. And honestly, be a springboard for people's career. Hire people who need to work in the environment to be a better leader or nurse or LPN. Be a springboard. And that way, people will always be coming in and out. That is why relationships are important. And the way that we think about our people that we serve is very important. There are 3 questions that people ask inside of your community, whether they live there or they work there or they're being interviewed there. Can I connect with you? And are you going to connect with me? Can I trust you to treat me well as an employee? Can I trust you to take care of my loved one? Can I trust you to take care of me? And are you committed? And that's a big question with turnover and retention the way that it is. Are you committed to doing a good job? Are you committed to caring for me? Are you committed to ensure that your team is caring for me? And as an associate, are you committed to ensure that I will be treated fairly and with respect? And then do you care about me as a person? So people who are trying to build relationships with you, whether they're coming to work inside of your community or whether they're choosing to live with you in their community, can I trust you to care for me? Are you committed to this awesome responsibility? And do you care about me as a person? And that is why the way that you think about the people that you serve, whether it's employees or whether it's associates, matter. If you want to become an influence-based leadership and inspire people to be the best versions of themselves, you have to answer yes to all 3 of those questions. That's what marketing is. That's what leadership is. That's what sales is. That's what a leader has to be able to communicate to the people that they serve. Another part of relationships inside of our communities, whether it's with associates or with families, is that encouragement is the oxygen of the soul. Have you ever had those moments where you are so down and no matter what anyone says, you just aren't receiving it? And then out of the blue, a stranger says something to you and your entire world just changes. Has that ever happened to you? It has happened to me, and it completely changed the outlook of my life. And it was a simple, kind gesture that didn't have to be said and probably was said to me by lots of people, but I felt like they had to say that to me. But because some stranger who had no context of what was going on in my life looked at something that I had given them and gave me a very simple and yet powerful compliment that all of a sudden made my head rise, my shoulders stand up, and actually be a decisive, pivotal factor in where the next phase of my life was going. That is encouragement. And that is what you get to do when you work on the R.I.S.E framework, when you work on relationships. Because encouragement is this magical force that can make you do things that you never thought were possible. It requires a little bit of momentum, and so it requires a lot of encouragement for some people to get the courage to take the first step. And in other people, all it needs is 1 or 2 sentences. That's all they needed to be pushed over that courage edge. So don't underestimate the power of encouragement, the way that you think about the people that you serve, and how your relationship and your presence and just adding value to them can change so much. The changes will be so subtle that you will feel like all of a sudden everything started working. All the work that you poured in, all the emotional deposits that you poured into, all of a sudden just created this huge boom when there were subtle signs all along the way. The next letter in the R.I.S.E framework is inspiration. Now, to me, inspiration can get confused with having to be this magnetic, charming, motivated person who can say all the right things at the right time and inspire people to change. And that is not necessary. You don't have to be the most eloquent speaker. You don't have to be the most motivated person in the world and show people how much you know. You just have to be authentic and committed to the cause. People don't follow tasks, they follow purpose. And if they see you be committed to a purpose, to a vision, to the mission, to the goals, to the core values, they will start doing the same thing. Again, subtle shifts, but big impact over time. Personal note, personal story. I wanted more control of my life at a point. I felt like I was working all the time and certain positions were being turned over a lot, and I was having to work in quite a few of them. And I was getting frustrated. One of the ways that I dealt with my frustration was shopping, which is not appropriate. I had this moment where I got so frustrated that I had to tear down the Amazon boxes. I did not even want the added responsibility of tearing down the Amazon boxes, which is a real poor problem to have. Talk about privilege. I had the money at the time. I was dealing with my stress by becoming addicted to shopping because I could at the moment. And then I got frustrated that the shopping that I did was coming in boxes that I had to break down and fold up and put in a bag. Then the joy of actually getting the purchase. Very ashamed of that, but it's true. But it triggered me to realize, Erin, you have a real problem and we need to go the opposite way. So I made a commitment to myself to become debt-free. And that commitment is hard. If I want more control of my life and I want to be able to walk away from the thing that was bringing me the most stress, I had to relieve any dependency that I had on that thing, which obviously was that job. So I decided to pay off every bill that I had and live a debt-free life. Now, that did not happen overnight. It happened over a course of a year, but I was committed to it. I budgeted out things for lunch. I said no. I told people within my community why I was saying no to things. I'm not buying anything anymore. And I was living the life that I said that I was committed to. And I wasn't selling it to anybody. I was selling it to me. And I was just like, there is something so joyous about paying off a credit card bill and to be so excited to pay off the next one, pay off the car, pay off all the little small things that were lingering out there, student loan debt. And people started asking me questions. And then people started to do the same thing. Managers within my community started doing the same thing, all because I was committed to making my life better. And honestly, it's the biggest raise that you can have, right? To be out of debt. And it was an amazing goal to accomplish, and it's really hard to stay out of debt. But the point of that story is to tell you that people don't follow tasks, they follow purpose. They follow what you're committed to. And they see the benefits of what commitment does. And they want part of that. Not everybody can go and buy all the things that they want, but they can take control of their life. They can feel accomplished. They can feel joy. They can feel the positive effects of not having a bill to pay for. So inspiration comes in many different forms. When somebody's on a diet and you see the results that it's working for them. If somebody goes to a class and then they implement what they learned and they see the benefits of it, right? If somebody has new eyeshadow and it looks really good on them and you want that, that's inspiring other people to take the same action. So it's not a Tony Robbins type motivation. It's understanding what the preferred outcome is and taking the steps to make it happen. So be authentic. Talk about the why. Talk about the struggles and how you're overcoming them. Nothing is more inspiring than listening to someone talk about the fear that they had and they did it anyway. That's inspiring. It was uncomfortable, but I did it anyway. I know that when I go and add value to this person, they're going to look at me, they're going to stare at me, they're going to make me feel really small, but it doesn't matter. I want to do it anyway, and that's inspiring. S in R.I.S.E is strategy, okay? Influence isn't accidental, it's intentional. Strategy is really deciding who you are becoming. I think that we get confused, and I still get confused, honestly, with strategy and tactics. And I've been really listening and investing in some of Seth Godin's books about breaking down strategy and understanding what are tactics, what strategy actually is. And this is how Seth Godin defines strategy. It is a philosophy of becoming and a chance to create the conditions to enable the change that we seek to make in the world. It's not about a specific plan with guarantees, but rather a way of thinking that guides long-term direction and makes deliberate choices to shape the future. So if you think about it, control-based leadership is a strategy. I'm going to tell people what to do and they're going to do it. But that's not a successful strategy. Influence-based leadership is this philosophy of, I'm going to add value to everyone I can because it makes me feel good and because it's going to help them rise to the potential that I see in them. That's my strategy. It answers this question. If I value people, will they value the job more? That's the strategy. People like us are doing this for this outcome. It's focusing on who we want to become. So my tactics of this strategy of adding value to people to create a good place to live and work, my tactics are being present, being positive while I'm being present, calling out people for doing the right things, and then discussing things that may not be the best of benefit, making consistent action across the board, and making communication a number one priority. Because I want to add value to people. We're becoming valuable because value adding is what I am doing as a leader. It's deliberate choices. Strategy is about clarifying who you want to become and the impact that you want to make, and then building a culture that resonates with people that you aim to serve. And that's why knowing who you want when you go into an interview is really important. It is being intentional. Being intentional with who you hire. That is strategic because you know who you are, you know who you want to become, and you know the outcome that you're looking for. And so you provide the conditions to make that happen inside of your community. Strategy is very important. And then we have the final letter, which is empowerment. Empowerment is simple. Empowerment is like this. You don't rise by lifting your team. You rise by letting your team rise. Empowerment allows you to offload some of that responsibility in a very strategic and controlled way. By empowering people, we want them to try, we want them to learn, and we want them to grow. If I had a sales director, I'm going to empower them to make all the past due calls inside the database first. Now, they're not going to like that. But it's really very empowering exercise because now all of a sudden they're going to have the experience of making all those phone calls, learning their database, and understanding what the next steps are for each one of them. When you empower people, you realize you're not the hero. You want them to be the hero. You want them to be able to run their department without you. You want them to be independent. You no longer want to be codependent. You no longer say, I decide or I direct. You say, I delegate. One of the hardest parts for me was to allow my really good managers to make decisions without conferring with me first. When they get to the point where they can do that, there's almost like this bittersweet growth to it where I'm not needed and I like to be needed. Like this codependent relationship we have with being needed. We don't want to be needed all the time, but yet we really like to be needed. And it's important to understand the goal is to not be needed. The goal is to be able to go on vacation and for your team to be able to handle all the problems. Your goal is to be able to have your department head go on vacation and her department run smoothly because she's empowered other people to make those decisions as well. Empowerment is walking in front of, beside, and behind your leaders in every part of their growth process. Empowerment happens when you create a growth environment inside of your community. Empowerment is what we need more of inside of the senior living industry. We train, we trust, and then we let go. And that's hard. Letting go is hard. But allowing the organizational chart to speak for itself is really important. Allowing your sales and marketing director, if you're a sales-focused ED, run the tours and take the deposits, and you're only there to be a support system is hard whenever you're used to being the one that everybody needs to turn to answer the questions. But there is no greater joy than seeing someone that you've invested in, that you've trained, do a great job. It's a lot of fun to watch that happen. So empowerment is delegation. Empowerment is adding enough value to people that their self-worth rises and that they want to do the hard work to get better. Empowerment is investing in your people with leadership coaches or strategy sessions that help them become more self-aware and more self-regulated. Empowerment is leadership of the future. It's what the modern day superpower is for leaders, empowering your team. Have you ever felt empowered by somebody? I have, and it was a unique situation. It was during a very tumultuous time inside of a community. And the vice president of operations, we had to do this media response to some things that were happening that was all over the news. And as an executive director in a corporation, you're not really involved in the media strategy. There's people to handle that. And there were certainly people to handle that. But I was given the opportunity to craft a statement, the executive director to craft a statement for the local news. Whereas the marketing PR person crafted the first statement and signed my name to it. Clearly, I read it. But the second statement I was able to make myself, and they approved it. And that moment, in that hellish moment, was this little glimmer of empowerment by somebody who never really made you feel empowered. But that person gave me an opportunity, trust. She trusted me to make a statement, to speak for my community. And that meant the world to me. I still think about it and I'm like, wow, I can't believe that person let me do that. And for all the negative things I could say about a lot in that person, that particular circumstance stands out to me above anything else, is that I got that opportunity in a time was at the most vulnerable, at the community level that was the most vulnerable. And I was able to be a spokesperson for my community. And I love that. So allow your team in these moments to add context, to step in and handle a situation that maybe you might handle, but because you trust them and you train them and you're willing to let them go and support them in their decisions, allow that experience for your team member and watch how they repay you with strength, honor, commitment, and hopefully doing the right thing consistently. It's important for you to understand in the closing of this entire episode, influence, communication, consistent communication, being committed to adding value to people is what you're going to have to make an effort on moving forward. When you add value to other people and you make those emotional deposits in their bank account, people will rise. Their self-worth will rise, their trust levels will rise, your occupancy will rise, and hopefully your rates will lower. We don't want those to rise, right? But when you focus on relationships, inspiring people to change with your words and your actions, and the successes and why you're doing it. And even though it hurts, you're still doing it. The strategy of knowing who you want to become and the tactics that you're using inside that strategy, and empowering people with encouragement and the ability to shine, the opportunity to prove to you that they understood the assignment, right? These 4 pillars will increase your influence, increase your occupancy, and hopefully increase the right amount of the right hires inside of your community. It's important. So which pillar do you think that you need to double down on right now on your community or inside of your company? Is it relationships? Is it being able to communicate the struggle and yet still doing the work to see the outcome? Is it your strategy, which is knowing exactly who you want to become and how you're going to do that? Or is it empowering other people to do the work, trusting them? I talk more about all of this in my leadership course and my new leadership accelerator tied into the course, which is called the ED Launch Lab. If you want to become an executive director, if you're a new executive director, or if you are an individual owner that needs a little bit more support for their executive director, this course and this leadership accelerator is for you. Join my email list, email me, find me on LinkedIn. I'm really excited about connecting with you and making an impact on your community. Sometimes we just need a little bit of mentorship, a little bit of perspective to make it work. And as always, aspire for more for you and own your story so you can create your future.